Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is my final third piece of a series of 3 Fun with Fisherman Father's Day type some cards where I'm utilizing the real dry fly. So package them right here, package a little 12 of them, you know. But playing around with the 3-dimensional aspect of a live piece and that fish right there, and just kind of having fun with, I don't know, the format and, I don't know, the space within a given, you know, otherwise 2-dimensional space that we're typically working on in terms of card making or scene stamping, of course, maybe even more so. A lot of the cards these days with die cuts and whatnot are going out into the 3rd dimension, but this is kind of doing the same type of thing. And it's kind of this format that I've always wanted to play around with. So anyways, this is done on kind of more of a, what I would call a traditional scene that I'm doing on just some 2-dimensional space. This happens to be the glossy cardstock that I like to do, and I created this kind of water line right here to show kind of above and below water. And I did this kind of a light flaring effect that I've been playing around with lately, but I usually have it coming through something on land, you know, like through some trees or something like that, but I really liked it underwater, and I'm going to have to play around with that a lot more because I really like the feel of that. So, and I didn't like covering it up, but you know, I was going to do this card, so you know, I lost a lot of it in the background, of course, but I don't know, I think it looks pretty good on here in terms of, you know, kind of creating a foundation for that fish to, you know, take a strike at the fly right there. So anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and I had a great deal of fun with these 3 cards. Here's number 1. Open it up like that. Number 2, playing around with a little bit more of the format, all 4 sides of a given card, and just kind of finishing it up with this larger piece right here. It's a full, I think this is 11 inches right here. Yeah, this is like 11 inches right here. I don't know how many inches that is across like that, but a full letter page envelope would be required for the mailing of this one right here. But just a great deal of fun, and I can't wait to play around with more 3-dimensional media in future videos. Alright? Okay, I'm going to try my final in a series of 3 Fun with Fish Father's Day cards, and I'm going to try something different. I've been playing around with the format in terms of pages and whatnot on a card with this one, kind of going around and utilizing all 4 sides of the card to kind of follow this fishing line around this way. This one's kind of more of just a sequential piece. It's an opening scene, and then we open it up here, and we have this kind of more kind of a, I don't know, grand kind of 2-page spread. And this one, final one, I'm just going to take it back and go back to just kind of creating a scene here and format, and I'm kind of inspired by that Jaws, you know, poster, the old Jaws poster, this kind of large creature kind of rising from the deep with its open mouth, and there's a little swimmer up here. This one's not going to be a swimmer, but it's going to be, I don't know, a fisherman, you know, from the format of the Father's Day card, kind of a playful interpretation, of course. And I'll use some portion of this. Now this was a half page, but I just took 2 inches off the top of this, so it is now a 9 inches by 4 1/4, and it is glossy cardstock that I'll be working on. Now here's what my idea is. I haven't really done too much of this in the past, but I'm going to create a horizon line somewhere here all the fish coming up from below, and this probably will be somewhere right about here. So we're going to create this kind of real small little landscape up here. So I'm going to treat the bottom of this and this top portion differently. And this top portion will represent something like, it's like you have a camera and you're floating around in the water, and you kind of take it kind of a split screen with like an above camera view of the surface and a below water portion showing what's going on underneath the water. Of course, this is going to be greatly stylized, you know, because you have this gigantic fish here. It's going to be in the foreground and whatnot. But we'll see how that goes. So, alright, so I need to do a little bit of a measurement here and kind of get my bearings as far as where this will go. This will work too. I like this one. He's kind of facing forward. There's also one called Canoe and Fly Line, but I'll keep this one similar in terms of creating the relationship between these two characters. These two characters have been utilized in, you know, every one of these cards, so kind of in keeping in theme, I'll just keep it to the fisherman and boat here. And let's see, I think I'll go down to about right here. Exact measurements, of course, are not required by any means. This is about 2.5. I'll make it 2.5 inches from the top. Okay. So 2.5 inches, and the bottom portion will be dedicated to an underwater scenario. And let's see, easy mask and easy situation here. I'm just going to fold a piece of paper. I just use copy paper as my stamping surface, working surface. Okay. And let's go to about right here. That will be my top area, and then everything below will be the water. But alright, so I have my little reference point right there. Let's go and start creating this split screen, so to speak, situation with area above and below the water. I have a range of blue tones here. You can use anything. You can be doing this on matte paper too, and do, you know, some sort of watercolor treatment of this down here, and that would be really nice. So let's see here. Okay, now I'm just going to be going with some Memento Summer Sky. I tell you what, this is going to take me, I'm going to get this large swatch of water down here. So, I tell you what, or a swatch of blue, I should say. So I'm just going to take some reinker fluid. If you have some kind of reinker fluid, or like I said, if you have some watercolors, that would be a really good choice to go with. Or if you have like a reinker fluid of any kind of light blue, that would work really well. Okay, so, alright, this is a slathering of this ink called Adirondack Lights. It's a very light ink, and we used to be made by Marvy. They discontinued their entire Adirondack line now. There's various distress ink ones, like the Tumbled Glass, or the Memento Summer Sky would be fantastic as well. I just don't happen to have the reinker fluids for any of those. So anyways, let's see, let's apply this down. There's my, I'm kind of doing this along my little horizon line there. I'll define the horizon line more carefully later on. Now if you get streaks in this, don't worry about that. Streaks might even be preferable, you know, in terms of creating a little bit of a, you know, kind of an aquatic, kind of hazy look to it. Alright, now above water, let's see, we'll go to about right here. Now the above water, what I'm planning on doing is making that above water area a little bit lighter, okay? And I'm actually going to leave some of the white of the paper looking like it's kind of that white shimmery reflection on the surface, okay? So as you can see, you know, this doesn't have to be a beautiful, perfectly non-streaked area. Alright, you can see that kind of flowing in there. To me, it just having that kind of a little bit irregular represents water, and that is fine, if not even better than a super smooth application. Not to say that you can't get super smooth if you want it. Okay, this is a medium tone. This is the Memento Bahama Blue. I have a lot of my Adirondack light in here too still, so, well, maybe I should take some of that out, because it's just not absorbing any of this Bahama Blue. Okay, it's a little bit darker. I need to really start applying more of this, though, because I have a lot of that summer Adirondack light in my applicator, so when it's super saturated, it's just not taking up any more ink. So you just kind of blot it off a little bit. And, I don't know, the farther down you go on your paper, maybe it represents the deeper area, so maybe you can go a little bit darker down here and kind of transition that up. What I mean by that is when you're using your kind of medium to darker tones, maybe you don't go up quite as far. Maybe keep it right down here and leave that area up there a little bit lighter. Okay, now I'm going to start using some of my mask here, and I'll come right up here. You can freeform it too. You don't have to go with something as mechanical as a straight edge piece of paper if you don't want to, but I think I'm going to create a little bit of a surface area right here. Okay, and again I'm going to try and define some of the lighter area within my water to represent kind of that lighting on the surface of the water. I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. Okay, so we have something like that, and okay, you can't hardly see any difference at all. I need to get darker, but you can see that little area of light that I'm kind of retaining in there. And you see a little bit of that horizon line there. We'll create a more distinct separation of that coming up. Alright, let me move into my darker blues here. Let me try and go ahead. You can just line up all of your, whatever inks you happen to have. This one's a light blue from Marvy. Okay, you can see that one's a little bit darker. And I like to transition those colors incrementally, meaning when I'm applying my colors in this kind of fashion with these layers and layers of ink, I like to have those undercoats, okay, because those coats of ink underneath the surface are going to affect the end result of what you can see, even if your darker colors overlap the lighter ones, okay? The lighter ones still show through because dye-based inks are transparent, so even if you go over them, it's not a lost cause. It's going to look deeper and richer in the end result, okay? And that's one of the traits of dyes, is that they are transparent, so it's like putting, you know, a clear layer of something over another. It's like transparencies or something. If you held up a blue and a yellow transparency, overlapped them and held them up to the light, you would probably see green. Okay. good saturation. Marvies are kind of fun to use in addition to other types of inks because they are thinner in terms of the consistency of them. So sometimes when you're applying multiple layers of colors over one another, sometimes the thicker inks start to kind of build up on your surface, or they're slower to penetrate the surface into the pulp of the paper, so they're kind of, the top area seems a little bit more moist, longer. So sometimes it doesn't accept the additional layers, top layers of ink as well. Okay, now you can let them dry a little bit, you know, and then apply your inks, and then it'll stick just fine. Or you can heat set it to expedite the process if you want to, but I don't know. The Marvies are just a good one to go with over the tops. They're discontinued, but you can get re-inkers, and if you have about 12 re-inkers or so, you don't even have to buy the blank pad. You can start off with your other brands of inks and then just go to a re-inker fluid and just, you know, put a couple drops in there and then apply it. And there's a lot of ink, of course, in re-inkers. There's more ink in re-inkers than there are in the pads themselves, brand new, so I don't know, they're a good way to go. They're very bright colors. Okay, so see what I'm getting right here? I'm getting this little bit of a glow on the inside. That fish is going to be covering up a great deal of that, but I'll show you what I'm planning on doing here in a bit with this bottom layer. Okay, let's see here. I need to mask this off. I'm trying to get, let me see what the straight edge of this is. Okay, that's good. Here we go. Okay, I'll kind of make the bottom layer a little bit darker than the top. I'll kind of define it a little bit more. Okay. There's one side, I'll do the other side. I'll kind of, this is a motion that I'm not usually doing, but I am masking here, so I'm talking about doing it that way. I was going like this, but I'm going to turn my stylus tool around this way, so I'm always kind of wiping in the same direction as far as this tip goes, because that's less wear on the tip when you do it in the same direction. And I have those types of little tips for the tips in the packets that are offered on the site, and just follow those, and these tips will really last you a really long time. They should never rip on you. I know it happens, but that's when people press too hard, or they're scrubbing back and forth instead of going in the same type of direction. Okay, so see, I'm always kind of wiping in one way, and just take it nice and slow. Okay, but here we go. So that kind of horizon line is starting to develop, or I don't know, it's not really the horizon line, but it's the water line, I guess. Okay, let's do the same thing kind of up here now. Okay, I didn't really use the lighter blue. Well, let me see if I used a little bit of Bahama blue. It feels really dry up here, so I'm kind of going back. I like to kind of apply my tones in a bit of a kind of a wet or moist application, so I'm just kind of going back to the Memento, because the Memento is a little bit thicker of an ink, so it spreads nice and easy on glossy cardstock. Okay, all right. That's pretty good. Let me go down to this area, and we'll try to transition it from, you know, some darker values of blue down below. Okay, it's starting to feel a little bit deeper down here with the absence of as much light, I guess you could say. Okay, now my kind of perfect color as far as layering additional tones. A lot of times when you get to the darkest colors, there's so much ink that you've already laid down. If you're doing it in this kind of layered dye-based technique, that it just, sometimes those colors just don't apply. But this Prussian blue, for some reason, seems to have a different consistency to me than other types of dark blues. It just, or even within the Marvy line, other colors within the Marvy line, I should say. I don't know what they do with it or what the chemistry aspect is, but it, as you can see, it really gets quite a bit darker using that color. That Prussian blue is almost, their Prussian blue, it's when you look at the pad, it almost looks black, but you can kind of see it looks a little bit almost blue, almost, you know, dark blue, almost black, I should say. That's what that hue kind of is, or that value of the hue. Okay, see how much darker that is? That's just a big slathering of it. So it really penetrates that paper. So it's a really fantastic ink. To rush it, I feel like this is starting to grip it a little bit, but my tips are never going to tear because I'm just not really ever putting so much pressure on them, okay? Now some of my tips are, I don't know how old, but 15 years old probably, and they went to multiple make and takes and workshops and whatnot, so some of those did get ripped in those. You know, just people trying to get the feel of it. Sometimes things aren't, what happens is people will do a few swipes, and if they're starting off with the lightest color, you know, like I do, it's just barely getting darker on the paper, so what happens is they start scrubbing harder and back and forth in order to kind of expedite the process, and there you have it, just kind of this scrubbing motion on a dry tip and a dry piece of paper. It grabs the tip and it starts to tear it, and of course that's what we want to avoid, so be careful about that aspect of things. Alright, but that being said, it's not hard to do, it's not a hard process, just kind of stay in one area and just build up that tone like that, and then move on. Don't do this like this, okay? Trying to get the whole thing done immediately. Okay, alright. Pressure glue, sometimes I get mixed up even on my table right here. I have to look for black, or if I'm going for black, sometimes it's Prussian blue or a dark green or something like that. Alright, this is black. Black does apply, and it does seem darker to me, you know, but we are starting to achieve or reach a little bit of super saturation, so it's not applying as if it were like that, you know, on a dry piece of paper. So you kind of have to build it up a little bit, and the fact that it's not applying too quickly means that you have control over it. We don't want to have a bunch of these oval shapes like that, so even if I do get a big oval shape like that, because I've applied the ink underneath it and the paper is kind of wet, you can see I can just really spread it out, no problem, and it just blends right in. Okay, so see those lighter tones and see that kind of glow that's working down there? That's from the use of some lighter tones underneath there. So those lighter tones are affecting our overall visual of this surface area because, you know, we can see the colors underneath. Alright, that looks like the deed to me, I think. It almost looks like the horizon. This is supposed to be kind of a, you know, more, more surface area, so I need to get that from looking like the sky up there. Alright, so, alright, here's my thoughts. I'm kind of developing this as I go too, so thinking of things on the fly here. Alright, let me go with a little bit of, or a lot more of that re-inker fluid. I'm going to fill in a little bit more. I don't know, I put too much on here really. Let me get a little bit of tone up here. Okay, and that's going to be kind of my horizon line. I'll put something else up there as far as an image goes. I haven't really decided which one I'm going to go with yet. Probably be some trees or something of that sort. Okay. Alright, so let's go with a little bit of or a lot. Let's go back with this darker blue. And let's go right here. I should probably stamp my image in there now, but before I do this, because then I can blend in things like some shadows and whatnot. Yeah, let me figure out what I'm going to do with that. You can see that that ink is really, really slippery. That surface is pretty slick now, so it's really hard to apply kind of that darker blue because it just kind of wipes right off. But like I said, that's not a bad thing. Things blend so much easier if they are kind of sitting on your paper a little bit longer before, you know, before it soaks in. You know, I don't want to go like that and then that's absolutely set. So the fact that it's on this glossy and there's an undertone of blue, it just allows me to really spread it out very easy. Okay. Alright, let me go figure out an image up top there, and then what I'll do is that'll set up a little bit more, and then we'll kind of go in here and define some shadows. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Okay, the stamp that I've chosen for this is Pine Island. I'm just going to place this kind of right around the horizon area, I think. Maybe I'll go like this and then have another one back up there somewhere. I'll do two impressions. I'll go a little bit lower and a little bit higher just so it doesn't, you know, isn't on the exact same plane. Look at my fingers there. And I'll stamp this one out in black. Okay, I like it kind of dark, so if you want a little bit of variation in it, you can take like a green pen or something like that and you know, add a little bit of tone in there. It might stamp out kind of a little bit of a greenish tinge to that, but we'll see. Okay, I'll go like that. And you know, this is a kind of an example of kind of one of those aspects of scenic stamping in terms of you don't always have to kind of centrally locate some image. You know, it could be just an element of it in the background. Okay, but now see, this is one of the reasons why I'm stamping this right now, so when I'm adding some tone, see up here I can create kind of a shadow underneath that little area there within those rocks. And that will anchor the scene down into the scene, creating some nice continuity between the object and its setting. And again, I'll explain that here in a minute. Okay, now this one again, I'm kind of setting it a little bit lower, just so it doesn't look like the same image just stamped twice. I mean, I don't think it will, because it's, you know, I'm stamping different portions of it. One on the left side of the scene, I'm stamping the right side of the image, and on the right side of the image, or right side of the scene, I'm stamping the left side of the image right there. So we have kind of our nice setting, and then that's going to be a nice setting for this fisherman right here. Okay. And then I'll put the fly here. If you've seen the other scenes that I've done, if you haven't, I'm going to be applying a real dry fly to this scene, and hopefully if you're someone that fishes, you approve with it and don't think that that was a waste of a perfectly good fly, you know. So try to get something kind of worthwhile. Alright, now this scene has been allowed to dry a little bit and set up, so I'm going to hit it a little bit more with some black ink at the bottom here, and kind of setting up that kind of this ominous type of, you know, I don't know. Is Leviathan always a squid? Or is it just anything kind of big? I mean, it's supposed to represent something here in the foreground, so we're, you know, but I don't know, it's kind of just playing around with that format a little bit. So it's going to look like this down here. Boy, look how great that color looks. I normally don't cut things out and apply it, but in this case it you know, instead of stamping that out on here, which you could do, I just think it's easier just to get this background down and, you know, not have to do any kind of masking. Alright, so I want to do some sort of aquatic plant underneath here, I think. A lot of it won't show, okay, because of the fact that this is going to cover up a great deal of it. But just as a kind of a subtle thing, detail down here, I'm going to apply it. But in order to keep it a little bit more subtle, why don't I do it in blue as opposed to something in black, okay? If you're doing it kind of in a color, within the color scheme, if you stamp an object, it'll recede a little bit in terms of visually, and it won't play as quite a big of a role as if you stamped it in a color that was darker, specifically black, okay? So I'll go with a dark blue here. It's just going to provide an extra little kind of background texture for the scene, and gives it a little bit more of a, I don't know, aquatic plant type of look. If you're doing this on matte paper or something like that, I guess you can do it on here too. You can do one of those things where you spritz this and it kind of gives it a cool kind of texturing in there. Which is fun to do. I've done that before with seams. Okay, something like that. See, it kind of, it looks like it recedes back in space, I think, you know, like that. If I did it in black, it might look like that fish is, has a, I don't know, something coming out of it, you know, like a parasite or something. Alright, in order to make this a little bit more powerful, I'm going to add in some light rays, but, okay, in order to kind of accentuate the idea of lighting in here, we do the opposite, and we start to approach some of our objects in here in terms of creating shadows, the opposite of lighting, of course, and lighting's complement. Alright, so let's see here. I can feel this tip right here. This tip is one of the older ones. I found a bunch of my old workshop tools somewhere. Those many boxes from coming back from shows. So these ones are really old, but I can feel that this tip is getting a little bit dry. It's working fine, but I can tell the tip is kind of getting a little bit dry. But again, this is something that's 15, 20 years old, probably. Well, not 20, maybe 15 years old. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm kind of adding some shadows at the base of these rocks here. See, I'm kind of just anchoring them down a little bit more. It's not quite so much yet. It's more kind of when you start moving into the darker tones, but see, I'm working it through the lighter ones first. Okay, now this one, Danube Blue, gets a little bit, you know, darker, but it's still not too dark. It's kind of a thickening, so it doesn't apply very quickly, especially over all these layers of other types of ink, other colors or whatnot. And see, I'm just kind of dabbing this. I'm dabbing it on its side, just to give me a thinner application of it. Okay. And let's go to the darker blue. This is just called Blue from Marvy. Okay, let's try the Prussian blue. Very, very dark. I do put some of it up in the rock as well. A lot of people like scenic stamps because sometimes in some forms of stamping that they got into, there's not a lot of content for what I used to be told, male cards. M-A-L-E. Just things like nature and scenes and whatnot were appropriate really for any gender or any age, really. And also could be kind of just settings for other types of subject matter, whatever subject matter you want. Okay, so adding black into it now, just kind of anchoring those little islands out, and really setting them into the scene. Creating a deeper horizon line again. Surface line, I guess. Not really horizon line. Okay, so that's kind of creating that situation there, and we have that texture. Now, one of the things I'm going to do, we have this kind of line of delineation between underwater and over, but I want to create a stronger visual when it comes to that. Let me see, here's this. That would be a good one right there, that little water ripple, but I was going to say but, maybe I'd do it different. That would probably look okay. I was going to do this ripply water texture up there, which that would be good too, but yeah, I think by the time I lay that dry fly in here, I don't know if I'd be able to see that ripple, so a couple little extra considerations to think about when doing this. Here we go. Here's my little water ripples right here. Okay? Alright, now here's the thing with water, right? Water ripples or whatnot, they tend to be kind of folds, you know, like you're seeing the darker versions of some sort of, you can think of water as like a fabric almost. And it's usually just the shadows created on a certain fabric are going to be just darker versions of that fabric usually. Okay, what I'm saying is that you don't necessarily have to see this as something that you stamp in black, what a lot of people associate with shadows. Okay, shadows are dark, so they're black, okay, but I think that when doing them in a color out of the color scheme, if it was a sunset scene, you'd have maybe golds and reds, you know, reflecting on the water or something like that. But what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to create, or try to create, a relationship between that surface, okay? Now you can barely see that right there. You can only see that super light summer sky color in the lightest of areas, but now out here I'm going to have to go darker with that in order for it to show up. So let's go with, let's try the Bahama blue, okay? Now I'm not going to stamp it over the whole thing, I don't think. Let's just try it in here for right now. Okay, now see the lightest impressions of it are in the lightest of areas, and the mediums are in kind of a light medium area. Okay. Now the darkest impressions, you can't even see the medium out here because this got darker, so I'm going to the darker one, and I'll add that in the darker areas, so we have this transition of textures, okay? I mean, you can go all the way to black if you want to, but see, that kind of creates this transitioning area of texture. It's darker in the darker areas and lighter in the lighter areas. Now that's a little bit too busy for me right now as far as how I want it, so what I'm going to do, you can do this with the same ink that you've used, or you can go with like marker, dye-based marker, watercolor, or like a Copic or something, or, you know, alcohol marker, and just put some streaks in here. But I'm just going to use this existing color again. I think I have a little bit of black in here, but that's okay. Okay, and I'm just going to put a few little streaks in here. Just to kind of mellow out that texture a touch. You know, and keep it looking from getting too busy. Okay, so something like that. Alright. How about this now? I think I want to create a little bit of a stronger separation. You know, this area is starting to, it looks pretty good as it is, but for me, I think I want to create a little bit of a stronger separation again between that underwater area and the surface. So let's go like that again. And let's create this little bit of a darker separation. I'm just going back to that Prussian blue. So that's what that looks like. I should be working like this. I have my blotter paper. Alright, now let's have some fun here. This is something that I've been playing around with for, I don't know how long it feels like it's been longer, but it might be a matter of weeks. And that's some light beams, okay? Now I've usually done these kind of crepuscular rays kind of coming through some trees or something like that, through a forested area, shining on the ground, but in this case it's a perfect opportunity to have some of these beams kind of in the water, okay? And I think that'll kind of add to the drama right here, and it'll kind of, I don't know, bring a little bit more of kind of an explosive quality to, so I haven't used the Fisherman yet. I'll get them in there in a bit. I haven't forgotten about it. Significant player within the our scene here. Okay, how to do this. We're just taking some Colorbox white pigment ink, okay? And what we're going to do with this is we're going to create these beams kind of coming down into this water. And I'm going to want to take just a cotton swab, just a regular cotton swab, okay? I like it kind of smashed, right? And frayed. And a lot of people know the big thing about this is that you just have to kind of utilize a slightly drier application of this ink. There's most pads, and most of my pads are super juicy, okay? This one happens to be very dry, alright? Doesn't mean you have to use a dry one, just use less of your pigment ink on here if you have a juicy pad, okay? Alright, so I want this light to be kind of shining down into my water. And I'll go for several beams. I don't know, I don't have a set amount or anything like that in mind, but and see how I do this. I kind of create that little flared type of look. It's thinner up here and flares down like that. It gives it a little bit more dimension when you do that. It makes it feel like the beams are kind of coming at you. If you want it to, like the beams are in the distance and they're not really coming at you, maybe you can kind of narrow the angle a little bit. Alright, so I'm getting some ink on here. It's, like I said, my pad is really, really dry. Okay, so I can just go right in there. Alright, but I'm going to blot it off a little bit before I take it in there. If you're using a really super juicy one, barely touch it and then blot it off, because otherwise you're going to get these blobs of ink everywhere. Okay, they'll just wipe off if you don't get one. If it looks kind of weird, as long as you're using most types of pigment ink, it'll wipe right off, you know. So if you get something you don't like, then just dab it. I often say that when I'm doing this application of this type of pigment ink in this way, I often remove more ink than I apply. I mean, I lay it down. A lot of times it looks too stark, you know, white and slathered, and I remove a lot of the ink off of it until it looks a little bit more natural, because besides that Brilliance ink, which is a brand or line of inks, I think it's a line, that one really dries fast on glossy cardstock or any kind of cardstock, so I don't want that. I want kind of a slower drying one, which most of them are. Now, I might use that Brilliance. I do use it, but it's when I want something to be really, really light, and I need that fast drying aspect of it, you know. So if I want something to be a little bit lighter on one end and darker on the other, I'll use Brilliance on the top end of it. Or I want it light, and I'll use one of these other slower drying ones that are a little bit more translucent too, in a different area. So anyways, there's your one beam like that. So you imagine, you know, we'll add a few more in here, and then we'll get this kind of this feeling of kind of this rays of light kind of, you know, penetrating the deep or whatever. Now with these you can also change your angle here, you know, for variation. Maybe don't have all the beams exactly the same angle and width. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go a little bit more opaque and lighter with some of these rays. I think it'll look good. Okay, let's see. Kind of doing this blind a little bit. Not sure, because I can't see those other beams because I'm covering it up, but let's go something like this. Now, that fish is going to cover up a lot of this, so I'm not really being too careful about it, just because I do know that we won't be able to see a lot of it anyway. Now, these pigment inks, when I'm doing it on this paper, one of the things that seems pretty consistent to me is that it goes on lighter than it appears in the end result. It seems darker to me. Alright, I'm going to do something here. I have this larger area. I'm just going to apply it with some of my Colorbox Stylus Tool, another sponge tip here, okay, because it's going to be faster. In kind of smaller areas, the Q-tip works really well. But larger areas, go ahead and just use some kind of sponge applicators, just faster. Okay. Now see, it's barely applying anything. Like I said, my pad is very, very dry, and I love that. I have one of the Colorbox ones. One is pretty juicy and new. The other one's really kind of dry. Alright, so see those light beams coming down there like so. Alright, let's keep working that. I'm not even going to bother putting one over here because like down the middle, because we're not going to be able to see it, so no point in really doing that. Okay, let's go like something like that. Let's go for a little bit of a wider one. Okay, I'm kind of starting off kind of in the lighter area when this is a little bit juicier, you know, and kind of working it down this way, and then more of the ink comes off, so less of it gets applied down here. That. Go for some variation. Okay. Something of that sort. Alright, now let me try for some slightly lighter beams, okay? And that's when I go to the Brilliance ink. This one's a Moonlight White. I don't know if there's multiple types of white from Brilliance. Or if it's just the one, but you can tell me. Alright, let me see this one. Okay, this one's not terribly juicy either, but it is more opaque, and then what you see is what you get. When you get it, be sure you're just laying down that ink where you want it to go, otherwise it dries pretty quick. Which is why they made it that way. It's supposed to be, it'll dry on glossy paper, it'll be nice and opaque, so it's nice having something with a little bit of a different consistency. Alright, let's see if you can see how that's varied. See how it's lighter up there and darker down here? Because I just applied it through here, okay? So I get a varied beam, and I like having those kind of varied beams a little bit. I mean, here, maybe I'll mask off this one side like that, and I can have this beam where it's, you know, well, here, let me mask it off up here. But maybe farther along the beam, maybe I just go, you know, a different portion of it, or half the portion of it, so that, you know, it's a little bit varied from top to bottom as well. And it's not all kind of one uniformly lit beam. It's like that. See, so it's a little bit lighter up on top of it. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so you can see the difference between these and these. It's just more varied. And I think what that's going to do is it'll direct our viewer's eye. It's getting lighter, you know, it's kind of rising out of the depths and leading the eye up to the point of focus, which is also the point of focus of that fish, of course, so it's kind of just reiterating, you know, this thing that you want your viewer to look at, you know, or kind of the point of, I don't know, the visual focal point, I guess you might say. almost forgot about this beam. This really super long one. Wait. Let me go with this one. This one goes through this much lighter area, so that maybe I'll use quite a bit more of this Moonlight White through that light area, so that just shows up in that portion of it. Okay. So for light beams, does that look kind of like it's underwater a little bit, I hope? Okay. Now, let me see. Let me go back to the Colorbox one. I'm going to, instead of having all those kind of that intersection of beams, be one kind of sharp endpoint. I'm going to diffuse them a little bit with a little bit of pigment ink right around that area. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready for our... I tell you, those beams are fun. Okay, let's add in our Fisherman. We're almost there. We'll do fun little things with this and extra details and whatnot. Someone was talking about doing a YouTube channel, but their area is so cluttered they kind of would hesitate to kind of show any of that on a video. And I say, hey, just show it. I mean, if you see that all that big pile up, it doesn't look any better the farther you go back on this, you know. I just said, just do the channel. Who cares if it's really tidy? I mean, that looks nice and everything like that, but when, you know, the videos that are kind of, you know, they're really educating you, you know, they're talking, you know, about teaching you about some kind of process or how to do a specific card. That's the materials they have out for them, you know, to use is that one card. But most of us, you know, the way we kind of do something is that we have a lot of stuff out so that we can kind of make decisions as far as what we want to do on the fly in some ways, you know. Alright, I'm going to add this character in. I just don't want his head going up into that area above, so I just want him far enough below. And I'll put him off on the side, like that. Alright, so there's our character. How does he look? He needs a little bit of a shadow underneath him to anchor him down, but I'm going to wait for it to do that. And I think a few little streaks of, I don't know, other colors will color in these rocks a little bit with some other tones, perhaps, but for the most part we have our foundation really set here. Okay. Fish, you know, quite like that. See, hopefully that's going to be nice and dramatic. It kind of makes for an explosive visual, I think. Alright. I have some different tones here, you know, just in case we want to add a little bit of variation to things like these rocks in here. I can go in and color them up a little bit. These are alcohol markers, so alcohol markers, I mean, it will blend a little bit with your dye-based inks, especially if the dye-based inks are still wet. These ones are dry, so I can just go right on them. I'm kind of hitting the shadow areas a little bit, and I did put some blue down there, so you know, you're not going to get some pure version of whatever color you're working in. But I did put some color in it from below, you know, and around it, the blue, just so that I'd create a little bit of continuity between those objects and their surrounding areas. I mean, it looks okay to not have any of that, but that's, I don't know, just something that I tend to do. Alright, just variations of kind of these lighter tan colors just for a little bit of warmth, okay? See that? I tend to work in very light shades, and then I'll work darker incrementally, but, you know, my usually thing is if you put it on light, and if you don't like it, then it's a very small commitment to that hue and value of it, you know, and if you like it, then if you think, oh, I like that warm color, then you can just keep getting warmer and warmer, you know, add a little bit more if you have it, you know, some other darker value of that similar hue, and just keep adding it incrementally. And that's the same thing that I did down here. I just start light and I work darker. At any given time, if it's as dark as you want it to go, then you can just stop. So those rocks right in there, they look nice and kind of dimensional. I don't know, here's a little bit of violet even. Let's try some of that on here. I don't really see it at all. I can't even see it, and I'm right here. Yeah, it might add a slight tinge of a different color in there for you, you know. But you can just kind of play around with things like that. But see, if you work kind of light, you can just check it out and see if you like it. Here's a little bit of green. It's like a seafoam green or something like that. And I can just kind of put a little streak in here like so. I'm just kind of warming it up a little bit. See that? It just kind of warms up the surface a little bit. Let me see, is that? Checking to see if that Fisherman is dry yet. Kind of. It's a little bit wet. Let me see if I can just lay down a little bit of a shadow around it. Here's some blue tones. What are these two colors? Well, they're real similar to these two, right? Yeah, these two. So you can just use those types of tones within the shadow area. Remember, those shadows are often kind of darker versions of what you have down there. So I'm starting off with the light one that was really similar to the summer sky. And then I'll go back in with this one. This one's cyan blue. I'll kind of hit that a little bit at the base and create a little bit of a shadow at the base of that boat. Okay. So it kind of anchors it down a little bit more by putting in this darker area down like that. You can do the same thing up here if you want to create a little bit more shadows down here, come into this area, you know, with a darker blue, the cyan blue in here, and put a few little streaks. You can give it a whole watercolor look. A lot of you are great with watercolors, watercolor pencils and whatnot. You can put kind of some shimmery texture on there with glitter types of things, iridescent inks, whatnot. There's all kinds of different material that I'm kind of finding out about all the time. I'm starting to get a little bit splotchy in here because I'm going over that and touching it. So let me see if I can add that back in there. Clean them up a little bit. All right. That is really fun. Okay, now, here's those little details that I really like adding into scenic stamping. Okay. That is, I'll go into my pigment ink. You can see around in these areas right here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. And I think this is really where we can add some really great dimension and mood into a scene. I mean, this scene right here is a really narrow one. I guess I can say, I guess the bottom part is a part of the scene too, but it's almost like a different world. But see this where I kind of add this little bit of atmosphere into it and just kind of adding a little bit of light around some of these objects in here, and it kind of creates this illusion of this feeling that light is hitting those objects. Okay, so this rock right here, down here, I mean that looks good as is, but let's say that light is coming in here, similar light that's causing this flare, and let's put a little bit of haze right at the base of it, okay? See, like that? So it's kind of illuminating it a little bit. Let's put a little bit down here as well. It puts a little bit of kind of this magic into the air. It's not different. I mean, they use this all the time in movies. They'll put a little bit of a fog machine in the background to create this light kind of shimmering off of it. You see stage acts, you know, they use a fog machine, you know, for that, to create that atmosphere. And it creates texture and depth within a scene or a live performance. Okay. So you put a little bit around the boat. I'm hoping that boat isn't too wet still. I'm going to be careful about it, but see kind of that area where the boat is coming into that light. I can put a little bit of light into that like that. Right? See that kind of, that whole atmosphere around there. And mist and fog. It's just a really fun little touch you can do. And again, where people kind of have a hard time with this, it's just there's way too much ink on their applicator. You just have to use much, much less ink, okay? Don't throw away your pigment ink pads that are practically dry. I mean, you can get a re-inker for them too, but keep them, because they'd be perfect for your mist and fog applications or light beams or, you know, whatever you use them for. Alright, let's see all that right in there. That gives it a little bit more depth and kind of atmosphere and kind of conditions that would be really kind of spectacular to be around. Okay, this is a white gel pen. We've added little sparkles, you know, or haze into the water. Now I'm going and adding these little sparkles. We have that water texture in there, and we have the highlight, the shadow areas. Now I can create the highlights in here as well. Doing these types of touches in here. It creates what we call, or they call, specular light in photography. It's light that's brighter than white, so it's those little glares of light coming off of things. If you have a, you know, a fork or something in front of you, it could be metal or plastic, you know, if you have lighting in there, if you have your stamp pad sitting in front of you, you can see that specular light. It's where the light is reflecting off of something. Okay, so that's what that is, those little light things in there. Okay. Alright, so almost there. That is a fun surface for this critter I just smeared down there. Anyway, look at that. Isn't that crazy? You have it like that. I'm trying to figure out how far I want it to go up there, but like that, and kind of wiping off that little smear of that white. I really do need to let this set up, and I'll spray it, then I'll go back in here and I'll glue all this down, but kind of a little bit of a head start. Let's see. Figure out which one I'll go with. Something like this. Or do I want to go with a little bit, something a little bit more subtle? This is like a brown fly. Oh, maybe I'll have it aim it the other way. Like that. See that right there? I think something like that. Yeah, maybe try to find a lighter one. It's kind of dark there. This one's a little bit lighter. Something like that would be good. Or here's the pink one again. If this was live, I could take a vote, but this is not, so I think more of the natural one. I just want it kind of a little bit lighter, though, I think. Yeah. I don't know. Well, doesn't look too bad, though. Fish cracks me up like that. This whole kind of scene cracks me up. Wow. All right. Let's let this set up a little bit and I'll come back to it. I like where it's going, and then I'll kind of frame it with something. That's why I kind of cut some top off of it so I can mat it. All right. Pause. Okay, I have framed or matted my card. I did that off camera or out of, I don't know, not shooting. That's kind of boring watching that, but I put a little bit of a white mat around the whole thing to kind of enhance that little sparkly area, and then I just had this kind of light blue tealish color to kind of match some of the you know, the warmer tones going on through that. I don't have a lot of you know, papers to choose from as far as matting goes. Yeah, a decent amount, but I thought that worked fine. There's all kinds of different colors you can go with, of course. Alright, now I've used some photo stickers on this now, and I'm going to position this fish right down. I'm kind of lining up with the bottom of that right there. I cut off a little bit of this bottom part, and I'm going to line up the mouth with that flare. Instead of, I'm not going to position this right in the middle. I'm going to put it like that because the fly is going to go right there. So, and that kind of evened things out a little bit. From that Fisherman is kind of positioned to the right of the scene, and this one will be kind of weighted more towards the left. Not that they can be completely centered, but that's, you know, like that Jaws poster, but this one I'm using a different element. And then we'll position that fly right around like so. But look at that, kind of that flare works really well, I thought, with the fly. And I can angle it like so. Or I can go, I don't know, it's not crucial, but something like that I think would be good. Or I can kind of aim this a little bit closer to the, you know, the Fisherman like that, with that, you know, that, I didn't think I wanted it like that. I thought maybe like that, kind of pointing towards the Fisherman and his rod, something like that. So I need to get a little drop of glue right around like that. And I have my glue gun ready to go. I've used glue guns for other things like kids' projects and stuff like that, but I don't remember using this for my own stamp projects. Not in a while, at least. I think I did something a while back because I bought a few of these real small glue guns, enough for the entire class at one point in time, but I just honestly don't remember what I used it for. Okay, let's go about like right here. Alright, got some glue down here. I sprayed my scene with kind of a workable, not a workable fixed dope, but a UV Krylon. Alright, so we have that. I guess you could do a little bit of a line coming to it, but I don't think I'm going to. And the whole idea of the kind of fly line is to be, you know, kind of transparent, and I don't know, I thought it would be a little bit awkward to put that in there, but anyway, here you have it. I really like what's going on up here with those light beams. I almost didn't want to cover up those light beams, I liked it so much. But I'll just have to do another scene like that. I was thinking about some of those little bubbles or something like that coming in from down here. Maybe I won't go so extreme, like, you know, like something like this. This is really huge, but something kind of, I got some of that, a little bit of a glue gun, I don't know, what do you call it, strings or whatever down there. But, yeah, let's see if we can kind of create those little bubbles. Kind of rising up from the depths. Just kind of creating a fun little texture to go down there. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. If I didn't like them, I can kind of rub them out, you know. I'd have to be really careful around those rays, because the rays will still rub out even though I kind of sealed it. It's one of the traits of this combination of media and, what am I saying, the gel pen marks and pigment ink over the top of glossy cardstock. If before you seal it, sometimes even after you seal it, you can just kind of rub it off and it comes right off. So that being said, I mean, if you give an original to someone, you know, unless they start rubbing on it, you know, it's not going to come off on you. It's not going to be that fragile, but as the creators of your pieces, it's kind of nice in that it gives you a little bit of you know, time to edit and change things around, you know, after you do it. See that kind of down there? It's kind of adding a nice little texture. We have our live fly. That's a lot of fun to do, playing around with these things like that. I tried other types of lures and whatnot, in terms of the thought process, I mean, but a lot of them have these things called treble hooks, okay? And it wouldn't lay as flat as this, so if we were going to send that to someone, it wouldn't be very good, because this will go just nice and flat in an envelope. This one will be a large envelope, of course, but it does go just completely flat practically. It's just, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch high, and these flies are dimensional, but it will go flat. All right, so anyways, we have a little scene going on up here. Fish. And that's the final piece. I'm not playing around with really, the format of the card. This is just a one scene piece, It's not even a folded card. I guess I don't think I could have done a folded card. I don't have like a large piece. I could, put another piece back here, but it's more of a flat, just application like that. So, yeah, final piece in Fun with Fish, Fisherman, Father's Day type of card, but it just makes for a fun little scene to do. I'm going to have to do this kind of flare underwater again because I really like the look of that, especially when you're creating somewhat of a focal point right there. But all right, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you watched the other couple cards too, I hope you enjoyed those ones as well. It's a little bit of a departure in terms of some of the visuals and content of a lot of the scenes that I do, but I really have fun playing around with scale and I don't know, context and I don't know, real versus surreal types of things, and kind of playing with those in a given space. But there's a lot of the same fundamental things that I like in a lot of my scenes in terms of creating kind of depth and lighting and contrast within a given space, and this is just kind of adding a little bit of a third dimension in there, which can really, I don't know, kind of add a sense of a whimsical sense to the visuals that you're creating. So I had a lot of fun. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning into the channel.